Okay, do you have any piece of furniture sitting around your house that you look at and you constantly are driven crazy by them? You want to fix them, but you keep taking them off your to-do list? That's what these two pieces of furniture are that I'm attacking today, and I'm hoping that if nothing else, this video will just give you a little bit of motivation, maybe give you some ideas of simple, easy ways that you can fix up pieces of furniture and turn them into beautiful and unique and new looking pieces for hardly any money. Okay, so the first piece of furniture is just this little end table. We had it in our living room. I've painted it several times before and I just don't like it. It's just kind of boring to me, and the paint is chipping on the top especially bad. So that is the first piece that we're going to get started with. For this project, the first thing I want to do is remove the paint off the top of this piece of furniture. And so I'm using the sander, and then I'm using 120 to start removing the paint. I did eventually resort to an 80 grit sandpaper, and it worked a lot better. It was a lot quicker, and especially helped when I was trying to get out this red stain that they had underneath the paint that was just really stubborn and had soaked pretty deeply into the wood. So depending on the type of wood and depending on the type of stain, it might take a long time to get the stain off, where maybe it didn't take so long just to remove the paint. For me, it probably took a good 45 minutes to remove all the stain after I got the paint off. So it was a little bit of a process. Originally, I was thinking about staining this wood, but the natural color is so beautiful and I liked it so much, I just used this cutting board oil and oiled it all up, polished it, and it was beautiful, the exact color that the wood was naturally. And so I left it like that. I wiped the entire thing off and I just love it. Okay, the first piece is done and I love just the unique look it has now. It's so much more interesting. It has such a greater style in my opinion, and I'll probably just leave the little chips. I think it adds a little bit of character in the side of the paint that's a little bit scratched up. The next piece was definitely a lot harder and took so much more time, but the end result was so worth it and I love the way it turned out. Here's what this ugly little desk looked like before. It just wasn't cute. It was so boring. There was nothing cool about it. And so I had seen some of these pictures kind of circulating the internet and on Pinterest lately of these desks and these dressers that are really popular right now on IKEA and in all these different beautiful homes. And I've always wanted one, and yet I never thought of the possibility of being able to use something I already have and turn it into something really beautiful. So I'm going to show you how. It did take a little bit of time, but the end result is so worth it, and I just love how it turned out. I think this is only like the third time that I've actually used a sander before for furniture, and I have found that if you angle the sander slightly, it seems to remove the paint so much more quickly and remove the stain and all that just a lot faster than if you're just holding it directly down on the surface of whatever you're sanding. So that is something I would recommend. I don't know if you're supposed to use it that way or not, but it definitely seemed to be the quickest in my opinion. Once again, for this process, I used mainly 80 grit sandpaper, but I did use a little bit of 120 at the end. I did not notice though that the 80 made it less or more smooth than the 120, so I didn't notice a huge difference, except that the 80 grit sandpaper seemed to be a little bit quicker in the process of sanding everything off. Sometimes I know I have so retrained my mind to assume if I don't like something that I have, I need to get rid of it and go out and buy a new thing to replace it that I liked better. And I'm just realizing how many things I can repurpose and just change to make them exactly how I want them, while being able to increase my skill, use my creativity, and save a lot of money, besides just not filling the world up with more and more stuff when we can use what we already have. So the next thing that I did after sanding down the front of the drawers as well as the top of this desk is that I went over the entire surface really quickly with a sander just to roughen up the paint and so that my new coat of paint will stick to it better. And then next I used these Yokes bags to tape down over the top of the desk to make sure that I didn't get any paint on the top of the desk where I just sanded as I was spray painting. Of course, if you are doing a desk similar to this one, you could always sand the top off very last rather than sanding it off first and then painting everywhere else. but I just wanted to get all the sanding over with right away and then paint afterward. So I've used flat paint before, and I just haven't liked the inability to be able to clean it well, and so this was actually a semi-gloss, and semi-gloss is probably one of my favorites to use because it's just so much easier to wipe down and get clean, especially now that we have a toddler running around that always has something dirty on her hands. I've found with spray painting that it works the best to stay a good 6 inches to a foot away from whatever you're painting. Work back and forth in zigzagging sections, and then be sure that rather than using 1 or 2 really heavy coats, do light coats and just do them multiple times. And so for this desk in particular, I think I went around it a total of 3 to 5 times, making sure that I totally got it covered in paint. But I did each of those coats super lightly, and so that I don't have a lot of runs. If you do get runs though, I highly recommend using a foam applicator and using that to kind of paint and brush away the runs before they dry. Next, because I absolutely hated the knobs that were on the desk before and had previously taken them off and did not want to put them back on, I decided to do these dowel knobs that I kind of made up out of my head. But I bought this dowel from Ace Hardware, and it is about 1 inch across, and I ended up cutting off about 1/4 of it using the table saw. So before I came out here to my husband's tool trailer to make these cuts, I did measure the distance between the screw holes on all the drawers to be sure that these poles, I guess is what they're called, this type of knob, is wider in distance than the screw holes to be sure that it's secured and that the screw holes are hidden. So for this desk, there are 4 drawers, so I needed to be sure that I had at least 4 of these poles. I did make some extra ones, and I'm really glad that I did because I ended up messing one up and having a screw actually go all the way through it and kind of ruining it, and I was really glad that I had those extras. When it comes to applying these poles, I'm sure there are more scientific ways to put them on and be sure that they're exactly in the right place. But I just measured and found exactly the middle between the 2 screw holes and marked it. And then I also did the same thing on the poles that I made. So I found the exact center of the pole and marked it as well before screwing it onto the drawer. These 2 lines make it fairly easy to line up the pole exactly in the middle of the drawer. And so what I did is I just line up both of the lines, the center line in between the screw holes along with the center line in the middle of the pole, and then I screw it in place using the holes that are already provided in the drawer. If you are going with the pole idea rather than using 1 knob, then you will have 2 holes. And so I will screw a screw into the first hole, and then the second hole I will actually put in the second screw after I have arranged the pole where it's exactly in the middle of the drawer. So this way I can just use a level to make sure it's totally level and be sure that it is exactly where I want it to be before I add the second screw, which completely holds it in place. Another quick thing to remember is that you want to make sure your screw is not longer than the depth of both your pole and the thickness of the wood of the drawer, because if so, it will actually go through both and pierce the front of your pole and kind of ruin the look. It is always so exciting when you make it to this part of the process. So once again, I really like the look of this natural wood without a stain, and so I just used that butcher block oil again, and I polished both the drawers and the top surface that was bare wood. Now I would recommend, if you are just leaving your wood bare, that you do use some type of oil and you polish it frequently, especially at first. For an example, we have butcher block countertops, and when we first bought them, we ended up polishing them several times the first couple of weeks just to be sure that you kind of build up this little bit of a resistance against water and other moisture that might kind of warp and ruin the wood. I love how using this oil just totally draws out the different colors in the wood, and it makes it so much more interesting. All right, you all, now for a before and an after. I am so pleased with how both of these projects turned out today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope if nothing else, this video inspired you and motivated you to accomplish and finish any of those DIYs you've been putting off, because I know how that goes. If you are new here, please consider subscribing. I create new videos basically every single week, and I've really been focusing on simplifying your life and simplifying your home through minimalism, through your decorating, through healthy habits and routines, and so much more. So if that sounds interesting, please stay tuned, and I will see you in my next video. Have a blessed week, stay safe, and see you soon. Bye!